right, guys, welcome to Office Hours with Bob Ross. This is episode number 12. Sorry about not being here last week. Had some issues with illness. Kids have been sick. I ended up getting sick. Wife ended up getting sick, and it's been a little bit of a hectic time. But I'm back, and what I'd like to discuss is actually part two to the topic from a couple of weeks ago, dealing with what I wish I knew before graduating college. And the last time I talked about a couple of things dealing with the performance side of it and being proactive and about booking gigs. And I actually had John, who is one of the founders of musiclessons.com, joining me on here and asking questions in regards to being a musician and what life is like, pursuing that. But today, what I'd like to discuss is I don't want to get too heavy into this, but the financial aspect of being a musician, as far as a couple things that I think that are important. And maybe some of you know this. If you're in college right now, maybe you know this, or if you're out performing, you've already figured this out, but it was something that I didn't know until later on. And that has to do with things such as 1099s, and as far as debt goes, whether to go in debt. So let me talk about the debt aspect of this. So what I would say is, what I wish I knew before going is not to go to a school necessarily just to go with the mindset that don't worry about it, you can pay for it later, no big deal. And I think a lot of people not involved in music are also doing this, where they get caught up in the idea of, I'm going to go to college, come out, have my degree, and then I should be able to land a job opportunity or set up a career just based on the degree. And many of us, if you're observing, any sort of stories on the news or reading about it or just seeing people's thoughts online, is that just because you get the degree doesn't mean that you're going to get the job. And what ends up happening, a lot of people are in incredible amounts of debt, and they don't have the ability to pay that off at not any time in the near future, and they're having to choose an opportunity such as, and I'm trying to think if this is still an option, income-based repayment plan, but there's also income. There's another one that's very similar. There's a couple different paths that are very similar, but a lot of people are having to come out and then they got this regular payment that they're making, and some people are coming out anywhere 50 to 100,000 and more in debt. And the thing is, especially going to music school, there's a lot of these schools that get talked about, and I'm not going to slam on the schools, because I think that there's some schools that are definitely, some great schools based on people's experiences, and not from my own personal experience. But if you think about it, you go to a school that specializes, especially in the performance side of this, doing guitar. You go to a school that is on the East Coast, New York, Philly, even Boston, Berklee College of Music, or anywhere else where you have these elaborate universities or conservatories. The amount of money, if you're not on a scholarship, the amount of money is going to be ridiculous that you're going to pay when you get out. And some people like to go into school and stay there for a while. They don't come out, within that 4-year time if they're getting a bachelor's. And, this feeling of having to do something more, like I talked about last time with getting a master's or a doctorate, then you're in there for a longer extended period of time, and you're racking up more and more debt. And I mean, you could be working while you're in school and trying to make some payments on it, but I mean, it's going to be tough, especially if you're trying to support yourself living someplace, and if you have a vehicle or anything else that you're trying to take care of. And in some cases, I mean, people with families, if they've already started a family and they're going back to school, I mean, it's a lot of money and a lot of debt to get yourself into. And the thing that I would say is be very, very aware of that. Be careful about going to school and getting in debt, and try to have as much money put back as possible to take care of the financial aspect of college, because you don't want to come out with large amounts of debt. And I'm not going to get into the specifics. In my case, I do have student loan debt that that we've been paying since I've been out. There's that grace period of a few months once you graduate out, but we've been working on that. And to have that aspect gone would be great. And here's the thing: if you're dealing with, because there's a couple, like Fed Loan and there's Sallie Mae, right? So, and Sallie Mae is now Navient. So you have to be careful about some of these things with the student loans and the private loans, with Navient / Sallie Mae. You got to be careful, because sometimes it gets to a point to where maybe you are feeling that the financial burden that you have is not conducive to make those payments, and you got to be careful. You don't want to just put it on forbearance or something like that, because then you have this interest that starts building on top of it, depending on if you have subsidized or unsubsidized loans. But you have this interest that starts to build, and it gets worse and worse, and you're further and further in debt, and it's more years added on to the bigger picture of what you're trying to do. And another thing in regards to the student loan thing, with when you sign a loan, whatever you do, and if you've already done this, it's too late for right now. There's a way to get out. But if any of you, because some universities try to push this, not the university themselves, I don't think that the loan companies, is that you have this Parent Plus situation, to where you have a parent sign on, or you have somebody else that can sign on and help you with a loan. If you take an alternate route, don't do that. Don't do Parent Plus loan. Don't do that stuff, because what they do when you set up something like that is they will base those payments. If you're not able to make that payment, if there's something that's going on for you financially, what they'll do is they'll start to look at the tax returns. They'll take a look at the tax returns, or request tax returns from the person who signed it. And in case of the Parent Plus loan, you got a parent and they're checking that out. And what they do is they take a look, well, we're not going to adjust the amount that you have to pay because so-and-so is doing fine financially and they can help. And, that may not be the case at all. Maybe you don't want to ask, parent to pay on that, or maybe there's a falling out. I don't know, whatever your personal situation is, you don't want to be caught up in that. And there's a way to get out of it. The way to get out of it is you have to make the full payment. That's not adjusted for income-based repayment plans at all. You have to make the full payment. I can't remember. It's for so many consecutive payments. It might be a year or two's worth of consecutive payments, and then they'll take the person off. Excuse me. So I would highly advise not to do Parent Plus loan. Don't get caught up in that. And if you can avoid the student loans, do it. Don't get caught up in that stuff, because the amount of money that you're throwing out year after year with the interest added on, the payments in general, that's a lot of money that you could have had, for yourself, and if you're trying to start up a family, or if you already have a family, or you're just trying to, push your life along, that makes it very difficult. So whatever you can do to stay out of the student loans, do it. because they're ridiculous, and it gets worse and worse and worse every year. Now, the other thing that I would say, dealing with what I wish I knew, has to do with 1099s. Excuse me. When I left out of college, I was following my own tax returns using one of the programs that's advertised. I can't remember which one I was using, but it was fairly easy for me to do my own tax return at that point. I didn't feel like it was that complex. But once I got out and I got married and started having kids and all these multiple sources of income, that through teaching, and if you're subcontracted or you're working with other people and they're sending you 1099s, then for me, we use someone to do our taxes because I didn't want to make any mistakes. But getting to the 1099 part, what I would say is, be aware that if you're hiring other musicians in, keep track of the finances that you're putting out, paying them. When you file your taxes, the thing is, if you're getting 1099 by a business and you send in your forms, the idea is that you made all that money and you didn't pay it out. So you're going to be held responsible to pay taxes on that full amount, even if you paid other musicians to play with you. So you need to send out 1099s in order to adjust that. That way you're paying the amount that is suitable for the amount of money that you actually made from the gig. So if you put all that money together that you paid other musicians and whatnot, you put that together and it looks like you made a whole bunch more than what you did, then when it comes tax time, then you're a bit screwed because now you're having to pay on all of that. So you need to send out 1099s to fellow musicians and make sure that you're not getting hit with the full brunt of the income that was paid to you in order to pay your musicians that are your buddies, musician friends. So be aware of that. Keep track of your miles. That's something else I would say. Make sure that, there's a couple ways to do it. You could have an automobile that's particular to the business side. I don't. So I track my miles because you could write off, the amount of money that you're spending in gas. But I don't use it for business only, so I track my miles. So make sure that you're tracking your miles and you turn that in. Any of the gear that you're using, make sure that you're keeping the receipts and you're writing down everything that's being spent. That way you can also file that on your tax returns. Instrument repairs, put that in. Some people, when it comes to the business side, will also do write-offs on food, and there's a rule on it but I don't know because I never write off if I eat. Usually when I go to a gig, I'm not stopping and buying food. I usually eat at home and don't worry about it. But you can write that off too, but you'd have to look at the rule on the law, the tax code or whatever. You have to look to see what you have to do for that. Because that's just not something that I do. But hopefully some of these things that I'm throwing out here, some of these things you guys already knew, or maybe already are encountering, or you're been doing it for years and you're fine with this. But for those that didn't know, just be aware of some of these things. And this could get even more involved, but I'm not going to go extremely deep, like I said in the beginning. I'm not going to go incredibly deep. Unless you guys have questions, I can at least answer to my own personal experience and what I've come to find out over the years and the lessons that I've learned on this. So if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to me and let me know. Again, apologies for not being here last week. Again, it's been a tough time. I had planned to put out some videos and lesson videos on musiclesson.com. There's some things that I was working on to put out, and it's been a tough time, so that didn't happen. But again, thanks for your support. Thanks for the comments. that you guys leave, the messages that you send. It means a lot to me. Thanks for your support. I plan on being back at the normal time next week, Sunday, 1 p.m. What would that be, the 15th, December 15th? Hopefully everything goes well, nobody else gets sick. Then I'll be back December 15th, 1 p.m. And if there's any particular topics that you guys would like for me to discuss, please let me know that too, because I'd be happy to go anything that's, more of the business side of it or the music side of it, dealing with things in particular to jazz or improvisation, the guitar, or dealing with things like, the booking of the gigs and the business, anything else business related. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and I will hopefully see you next time.